Welcome back to the Hang Time Podcast, another episode. My name is John Schumann from NBA.com. My man Sekou Smith still recovering. We will talk to him soon, hopefully. I have my man Sean Powell getting ready to travel out to Toronto for the finals, where the Toronto Raptors will be hosting games 1 and 2 of the finals, their first trip, obviously, to the championship round, franchise history, thanks to a 4-2 series win against the Milwaukee Bucks in the Eastern Conference Finals, and a kind of crazy Game 6 victory on Saturday, featuring a 26-3 run that turned a 15-point deficit into an 8-point lead, one that they would never give up. That 26-3 run capped off by a majestic left-handed Kawhi Leonard dunk off of a steal and feed from Kyle Lowry. I was in that building on Saturday, and I can say that it was a wild atmosphere with the crowd inside and the crowd outside, probably the biggest Jurassic Park crowd they've ever had. It was quite a night in Toronto. It was fun to be there, to see that, just to see the sheer joy, the volume of the joy in that building with the fans and with the team. I mean, the joy that was emanating from Kyle Lowry as Leonard was at the free throw line with the Raptors up 4, and I think just 3 or 4 seconds left was pretty cool to watch. Give the Raptors a ton of credit. Their defense in that series was fantastic. The Bucks, the Bucks after 2 games look like the best team in basketball, and then all of a sudden they go to Toronto. The series turns in a double overtime victory for the Raptors. They were a possession or two from going down 0-3 in that series, and then they completely turned the series around. Sean, what's your biggest takeaway from the East Finals? Is it with Toronto? Is it with Milwaukee? Is it some combination of the two?
Well, I knew that the 4 teams left standing were, in my opinion, fairly even. I didn't have a significant difference between Milwaukee and Philadelphia and Boston and Toronto. And, they all had something on the line. Boston had Kyrie Irving. Philadelphia made a big midseason trade where they pretty much put up most, if not all, their chips on the table. The Raptors had the Kawhi Leonard thing hanging over their heads if they were eliminated early. And of course, the Milwaukee Bucks had the best record in the NBA. But I'm not surprised by the last team standing. Kawhi Leonard has played at just a terrific postseason so far. He showed us that he's capable of being a volume shooter when I wasn't so sure about that part of his game. I think he drew back on his power forward experience that he had at San Diego State, and that he, yanked down rebounds, attacked the glass relentlessly. And of course, we saw the defense and, the fact that when you put the ball in his hands, the game's on the line, he can bail your team out. So, that part, I think stands out the most, the way Kawhi Leonard pretty much took this team on his back. And keep in mind, by the way, this is a new team. I think you also saw how the players yielded to him. I mean, here's a guy who just, came in this season, and there was at least one guy in the locker room who wasn't thrilled that he was here. Not that, Lowry had anything personally against Kawhi Leonard, but, he liked his buddy DeMar DeRozan. But now that Lowry is richer by $500,000, which is the bonus he got for making the NBA Finals, and he has a chance for a ring, I think he's good with it now. So that's my takeaway. Kawhi Leonard carrying a team, and all of a sudden the Raptors are in the finals for the first time.
Yeah, and I got to give one more shout out to Fred VanVleet, who showed us the power of procreation. The guy was 6 for 42 over a 9-game stretch, and then his second child is born. Fred Jr. is born, and he goes 14 for 17 from three-point range over the last 3 games of that series. His output, giving Leonard somebody who can make shots off of the attention that Leonard was drawing from the Milwaukee defense, was absolutely huge in that series. 14 for 17 from three-point range over a 3-game stretch is just ridiculous. And he was, even in Game 6, he was hitting some sort of step backs and off the dribble. It wasn't just catch and shoot, wide open catch and shoot opportunities. And then give credit to Lowry, too. I thought he was fantastic doing what he does, taking charges. That steal on Middleton that led up to that Leonard dunk was absolutely big, was absolutely huge. And they just got, Marc Gasol hit 2 big threes in that fourth quarter. They were just fantastic. Milwaukee obviously goes into a summer with some questions regarding their free agents. Middleton, a free agent. Malcolm Brogdon, a free agent. Brook Lopez, a free agent. Mirotic and George Hill. Basically, they have Antetokounmpo for at least 2 more years, but they also they sewed up Eric Bledsoe with a contract extension, and then Eric Bledsoe goes and has a pretty terrible conference finals. So they have some questions going forward, and we will see if they're able to sort of come back with that same group. Obviously, they were the best regular season team in the league, the best team through 11 postseason games where they were 10-1, and then things just sort of fell apart, and they have to figure out, a few things. And Giannis Antetokounmpo's got to come back a better player, a better shooter. He's got to have maybe a couple more counter moves when he draws the attention of defenses. And we'll see going forward. I'll be curious to see what happens with that team this summer. But we move on to the finals. The Golden State Warriors have been waiting to see who wins that series. They swept the Portland Trailblazers, and they will be starting the finals on the road for the first time in this five-year stretch. Sean, do you think starting on the road means anything for Golden State?
No, I don't, actually. This is a team that has shown it can win on the road. But I lost track of how many straight series they've won at least one road game, which I believe is an NBA record.
It's every series during this 5-year run.
Okay.
Anything before that really is kind of irrelevant anyway, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Then you saw how they won on an important game on the road in Houston to eliminate the Rockets. And, of course, they took 2 in Portland. And what was impressive about those games is that they trailed by 18 points in Game 3, then 17 points in Game 4. And as you know, it's very difficult to close out a team on their own court. And the Warriors did that not once but twice. And did it obviously without Kevin Durant, and for whatever it's worth, DeMarcus Cousins as well. So this team is a veteran team, knows how to win. I don't think they're intimidated by any Jurassic Parks. I don't think they're intimidated by Drake. I don't think any of that atmosphere is going to rattle them. It's not going to rattle Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green. Draymond Green may thrive in that, actually, that kind of atmosphere. So I don't really think, when we get to the NBA Finals, I think they're all neutral courts. I don't really think it matters to either team once you get this far in the playoffs where you play the game. So, but yeah, it is something new for the Warriors. I think the bigger question, obviously, is who's going to be in uniform for them? Is Kevin Durant? Unlikely. DeMarcus Cousins, who knows, and whether or not they can continue the stretch they're on, missing those important pieces.
Yeah, as far as right now we're talking on Monday morning with Game 1 Thursday night. As far as we know that Kevin Durant is not playing Game 1, right? Is that like all we know as far as Durant and Cousins and their health? That's basically it, right?
Yeah, there hasn't been like an official ruling, but it doesn't look like Kevin Durant will play Game 1. To me, if I know he's not going to play Game 1, then I don't think he's going to play Game 2. What is going to change in 48 hours that, definitely going to put him on the floor? But again, until we hear it from them, until we know for sure, that's just a guess right now. I would say if he doesn't play either of those first 2 games, I'm not sure the Warriors win both of them. I think at some point, you keep playing with fire. In this situation, you're going to need someone to come up and bail you out when the ball's not falling for Klay. All of a sudden, Steph gets frigid. It's not like we haven't seen that before. And then you need another scorer on the floor. So maybe this is when it catches up to them. I don't know, but I would be very surprised if they won both games in Toronto and Kevin Durant doesn't play.
Yeah, I think the good news for Golden State is that Andre Iguodala seems to be on track for playing in Game 1 after missing Game 4 of the Portland series with a calf issue himself. And that's obviously important in regard to the Kawhi Leonard defensive assignment. Like if you didn't have either Iguodala or Durant, out there, then things could get sticky, I think defensively especially. Is there any matchup that intrigues you with this series, Sean? Any individual matchup? Obviously, you have a Curry and Lowry, though they might not necessarily be defending each other all the time. At the 2, Danny Green, who's been struggling, and Klay Thompson. Then I assume with Durant out, you have Iguodala and Leonard. And then you have Pascal Siakam, Draymond Green. And then finally, I guess, do we expect Kevon Looney to start against Marc Gasol?
Yeah, although I would put a small guy on Marc Gasol because all he does is stand out by the perimeter. I mean, again, until he shows any kind of inclination to post up or even be aggressive offensively other than beyond the arc, and only then when he has a wide open shot. I don't waste a good defender on him. He's got to earn that respect. And I don't think at this stage, I think he feels that it's just not his place to be that type of player as he was in Memphis. As far as the matchups, I think it all starts and ends with, how you go about guarding Kawhi. Now, the difference is in this series, Kawhi is going to see at least 2 very good, if not elite defenders. And that's Iguodala, and I can see them putting Draymond on him as well. I know you got Siakam out there, but he doesn't frighten the Warriors anywhere near that Kawhi Leonard does. Remember, was it just 2 years ago in the playoffs? Kawhi was torching the Warriors, absolutely torching them, and that's when Zaza Pachulia shoved out his foot, and it really was never the same for Kawhi in San Antonio again. So I'm sure the Warriors still have fresh footage of that. And I think they're going to see what else could work in that situation. I think you can see Draymond giving him some looks. I think obviously Iguodala is going to give him some looks. I would not be completely surprised if Klay Thompson swung over and spent a few minutes on him. So that's really what this series hinges on. How can they bottle him up, force the ball out of his hands, and let someone like Danny Green try to beat them? And given the way Danny Green is working it, that's a chance the Warriors take. And by the way, as far as Kyle Lowry and Steph Curry, I think that's a tough task for Kyle Lowry. First of all, Lowry's not known as being a top-notch defender. Curry is on an incredible hot streak, the best he's ever looked in the postseason. And not only does Kyle Lowry have to spend some energy on the defensive end, he's got to have enough of it left over to bail out Kawhi Leonard whenever necessary. So, he's not going to be guarding him probably for, a whole game, not for 35 minutes or anything like that. But when he is on him, I think he's really going to have his hand full fighting through screens, running around. We'll see how fit he is this time in June. Because Steph Curry is definitely going to give him a run.
Yeah, Curry did not play well versus the Raptors in the regular season. He did not shoot well.
Whatever the regular season. I mean, again.
Right. And the interesting thing is Leonard missed one of the games and Draymond Green missed the other game. So those two guys didn't match up at all in the regular season at all because they just didn't play in the same game. Van Vliet was actually the primary defender on Curry in one of those games because Leonard was out and Van Vliet was started in his place. So the Raptors started small. So there's not much to take out of the regular season meetings between these two teams, although we can say that the Raptors are the only team that the Warriors have not beat this season. I'm sure that will change in the finals, whether it be 1 game, 2 games, 3 games, or 4 games, they'll get a win. But that's what we could say going into the finals, that the Toronto is the only team that the Warriors have not beat yet this year. And one of those games went to overtime. It was a game that the Raptors led by a lot, and the Warriors actually led by 10 with just a few minutes left. Durant hit a couple of threes in the final minute of regulation to send it to overtime, and then where the Raptors won. The other game was a more decisive victory. A couple stats from a couple things you mentioned. You mentioned Gasol. He has I'm not sure what the exact percentage of, but like the percentage of his shots that have come in the restricted area, which is right at the basket, is like the lowest among everybody that's taken at least 50 shots in this postseason. So you're right. He's not getting to the basket. We've seen him matched up with Tobias Harris in the conference semifinals. He didn't really look to post up much against him. We saw him, get switched on to smaller guys in the conference finals. He didn't really look to post up at all. I think the Bucks put Antetokounmpo on him in game 6 there, and there was no sort of inclination of getting into the post. You're right. He spends a lot of time on the perimeter. In fact, he's also seen like the biggest increase in the percentage of his shots that have come from 3-point range from the regular season to the playoffs. And speaking of the regular season to the playoffs, Danny Green has seen the biggest drop in effective field goal percentage from the regular season to the playoffs among guys that have taken at least 50 shots in the postseason. So he has been struggling for sure. I don't know if it's an injury issue. I've seen him after a game be limping around in the locker room with huge ice bags on his left knee. I don't know if that's bothering him. He got early in game 6, he got like 3 wide open corner 3-point attempts, and he missed them all. And, you know, he basically didn't play much I don't think he played at all in the last 15 minutes or so of that game 6, where the Raptors went with Van Vliet and Lowry backcourt. And we could see that against Golden State. You know, I don't think the Raptors are afraid to play 2 small guards against the Warriors, because I think they can feel somewhat comfortable with Lowry guarding Klay Thompson. He guarded Chris Middleton for a lot of the Milwaukee series and did a decent job. You know, Thompson could post up against him, but I think you'll take that if you're the Toronto defense. You'll take Klay Thompson posting up Kyle Lowry if that's going to sort of be what Golden State wants to go to. The Warriors are just a very different offensive team than any of the two that the Raptors have faced in the last 2 rounds, where your primary goal first is to stop Ben Simmons and Giannis Antetokounmpo in transition. Golden State with their half-court offense, and they don't run a lot of pick and roll. It's post up and split action and off-ball screening, a lot of off-ball screening. So Toronto's going to have to be really on point with their off-ball defense, whether it be switching, whether it be fighting through those screens. I think against Milwaukee, it started with on ball and collapsing into the paint when the ball got there, and then fanning out to the shooters. They did a fantastic job of that. Their rotations were on point for almost the entire series. But this is a different element that they're going to have to face offensively. I think that should be interesting to watch on that end of the floor. On the other end of the floor, like you said, it starts with Kawhi Leonard, and it'll be interesting to see not only who's defending him, but just how much help that player gets. Because Leonard has been fantastic playing one-on-one. Milwaukee obviously showed a lot of help and forced him to kick the ball out. And then once the Toronto supporting cast got its mojo back in game 3 or 4, I guess it was, that's when things really turned for the Raptors, when other guys started hitting shots, whether it be Gasol, Van Vliet, Lowry. So it'll be interesting to see how much help the Warriors give if Leonard plays one-on-one. We know they'll switch a lot, and so we could see Toronto sort of targeting Curry and pick and rolls, but it'll be interesting to see. We'll know more after game 1 with this series, just how these guys are going to defend each other. Sean, you have our series preview. I believe your prediction was Warriors in 5. Is that right?
Yes, it is. And obviously it's all fluid here because we don't know how many games Kevin Durant's going to play. If Kevin Durant plays from game 1, or if the Warriors manage to win a game or 2 without him and then he comes back, I think this is a sweep. I just think the Warriors are just in so many different ways superior to the Raptors. They have more superstars. They may have more options defensively. They have more options offensively. They have more experience. They have better elite defenders. They have a coach who's been there before. If Kevin Durant comes back and he doesn't need any kind of transition period to get comfortable, that's a wrap. I don't see how the Raptors even make this suspenseful. I
will disagree with you on one point. Well, it's not the exact point you said, but Toronto's been the better defensive team of these two in these playoffs. Golden State has improved defensively as the playoffs have gone on. The Portland series was their best defensive series, if you just look at the numbers. But the Raptors have been fantastic defensively as a team. Obviously, it starts with Leonard and his ability to defend one-on-one. But I think their rotations, their communication, everything has been totally on point. Now, the Warriors are obviously the best offensive team they're going to face. or they will have faced all season. But I will say that they have been the better defensive team through in the regular season when they weren't exactly turning it up a notch, and in the playoffs when they have needed to be. They have been fantastic defensively. That 26-3 run against Milwaukee started with their defense. Milwaukee is obviously a little bit more vanilla of an offensive team and easier to defend. Same thing going back to Philadelphia. But the Raptors have been fantastic defensively. I think that end of the floor is going to be the more interesting to watch in this series, is how Toronto's defense can deal with the shooting threats that the Warriors have, whether they ignore a couple of Warriors on that end of the floor, and if that comes back to bite them because the Warriors sort of know how to deal with, say, Draymond Green being ignored on the perimeter, or Kevon Looney being ignored, or Andre Iguodala being ignored on the perimeter. They know how to sort of take that and use it to their advantage. Obviously, with the sort of off-ball movement of Curry is just fantastic. He's relentless in giving up the ball and then moving without it and finding an open spot. So whoever is guarding him, and that's all five guys with Toronto. It's about not only the guy guarding him initially, but the communication, the switch. If you switch, the next guy following him around, or the next guy sort of helping the Curry defender get through the screen and back out to him. And I think that end of the floor is just going to be fun to watch. I sort of agree with your pick of Warriors in 5, especially if they get one of the first two, then they can come home. That's a sort of an interesting dynamic where they have 3 and 4 at home after getting if they get a win in the first 2 games and then come home, they can really seize control, because a 3-1 lead is mostly tough to come back with. Obviously, the Warriors have a history of blowing a 3-1 lead, but I think the 2 games 3 and 4 at home could be sort of an advantage for them in this particular series. But I will say I will pick Warriors in 6, if only just to mess up us East Coasters and make us go back across the country before we get to go home. But game 1 is Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern on ABC. Be sure to read Sean's complete series preview at nba.com/finals. I have a little section in there about how the Warriors have performed through the first 3 rounds and how that compares to the first 3 rounds over the previous 4 years. And I will have a full numbers preview on this series by Tuesday morning, I believe. And we will be back next week with another episode. We will review games 1 and 2 of this series. We're going to switch up to once per week for the finals. Shout out to my man, Sekou Smith. Be sure to subscribe to Hang Time on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And please do not forget to leave a review. We'll talk to you next time.